My life ever being called a nigger, so this shall be fun. But you called me a fucking nigger. I need
to stay here. My mother died.
I understand that, but you called me a fucking nigger. No,
I'm sorry.
You weren't sorry when you said it on the phone.
Listen, there was people screaming
but at the end of the day, and the climate that we live in today, society.
I was sorry.
I understand that, but it's above me now.
I need a room tonight.
Well, there's the Best Western next door.
No, please, let me hear. My daughter's here.
I'm sorry, but I mean, I was on the phone when you said it.
I said, I'm sorry. Please, I've had a horrible day
And I had a horrible time when hearing that.
He won't let me in.
It's above me. She called me a fucking nigger.
Sir, my grandma just died.
I understand that, but it's above me.
Please let me.
It's above me. Sorry.
I got my
the Best
card.
Western is next door.
Sir, the rest of our family
I understand that, but it's above me.
Please. I apologize.
She said what she said.
I understand that.
I understand.
She wants the chance.
Say it again.
Say it, nigga.
What, nigga? Who said I can't say nigga?
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, we gotta understand the code of white supremacy is born out of fear. That's why every time they harm us, they try to justify it by using fear as an excuse. Vigilante lynch mob violence has not only been accepted by America, but has been normalized through American history. Violence has always been their first answer. And they always say they did it out of fear. And every chance they got, they did it under the guise of protecting white women. Now, we really have to have that mindset way more than they do, especially protecting our women and children and protecting ourselves. We have had so many casualties, and the point is to have as few casualties as possible. But if our blood is going to be shed, we might as well let it be for something important, like creating our own nation, because this nation was never designed for us to fit in. And if you built your country on blood, you can't expect any different results. Back in 1898, a black man, Frazier Baker, was appointed postmaster of a small town called Lake City, South Carolina. Now, the white residents were pissed. They said it was disgusting that they or their families would have to get their mail from a black person. Then they said black men would proposition the white women they came across, if not flat out assault or rape them. So the first thing the whites in the city did was burn down the post office. So then this brother, Frazier Baker, then moves the post office to his own house, just so he could still do his duties. So then one night, as Frazier Baker and his family slept, his wife Lavinia Baker heard noises and woke up. And when she got up, she realized the house was on fire. Then when she woke up her husband, Frazier Baker, they realized it was a mob of white men outside shooting their house up. So Frazier and Lavinia Baker got their children and then tried to put out the fire with the help of their 18-year-old daughter, Rosa. He then told his 11-year-old son, Lincoln, to go ring the alarm to let people know they were under attack. But he couldn't because he had got shot. Now the fire was getting bigger and he realized he couldn't put it out. Just imagine being in your house while it's on fire with your children, with a mob shooting at your house just waiting for anybody to run out. Everybody was scared. Their son was shot already. And Frazier told his family, we might as well die running instead of standing here being burnt to death. And as his brother Frazier Baker tried to leave his family out the house, they immediately shot him as he opened up the door. And he died right there in the doorway. So then Lavinia told her children to get out and run as fast as they could. And the mob started shooting at them and they got injured, but they managed to get away, even though their 3 oldest children were shot. As Lavinia started to run with her newborn infant, they shot her right through her hand, ripping their newborn infant baby girl right out of her hands. And baby Julia died instantly. Lavinia was shot again in her leg, and she fell right beside her husband Frazier and their baby Julia. And with their house still on fire and the mob still shooting, she somehow managed to get her other 5 children in safety, even though the 3 oldest were shot. And they hid in the woods until the mob left and the fire went out. Lavinia and her children were stuck in South Carolina for 3 days and didn't get any medical attention. And their injuries ended up affecting them for the rest of their life, not to mention having their father and their sister killed. Now, because Frazier Baker was a postmaster, a federal employee, his lynching sparked an outrage. and was the news of his time. And thanks to people like Ida B. Wells, who went hard trying to get this brother justice, and Representative George White, the only black man left in Congress at the time, they applied pressure on the federal government and forced them to take some kind of action, and they ended up arresting 13 members of the mob. Now, this was one of the few lynchings that somebody actually got charged for. But since this was an all-white jury with a white judge in South Carolina, the defense based this whole case on white supremacy. They blamed Frazier Baker for not stepping down as postmaster after white residents told him to. Even the prosecutor said appointing a Negro as postmaster was a grievous error. But he said using lynch mob rule and making the lynching so sloppy goes against the white civilization they claim to be protecting. He said that makes them just as savage as the Negroes. Now, in this case, a few of the jurors did get off cold, which was unusual, but a couple of the jurors found him guilty. However, the judge in the case just declared it a mistrial and threw the case out. And they never retried the case, they just kind of let it go away. And not one person was ever punished. And today is no different. Regular citizens still try to take the law in their own hands and think they're doing some kind of vigilante justice. Because when you lie to yourself for so long, you start to believe your own lies. And then other people started to believe it. And today you end up with cases like what happened to the brother Jeremy Sorensen, when a random white dude riding down the street decided to get out and kill this brother.
And we begin with developing news out of Provo, where police are investigating a domestic violence-related shooting that left a man in critical condition.
They say it all started with a fight between a man and a woman near 5th North and 2nd East, right in front of BYU student housing. Let's get live now to Jason Wynn, an update on the situation. Jason?
Emily, police say that fight was physical, and it happened right in a driveway right behind me around 8 o'clock. And that's when investigators say that a man who was passing by decided to get out of his car and get involved. Now, investigators tell us that there was some type of verbal altercation between that man and the man that was involved in the domestic dispute. Now, the woman in this case was hurt, and she was also taken to the hospital. But police say that man pulled out a firearm and shot the man involved in that domestic dispute twice in the chest. Now, police say that this all happened right in front of BYU housing, and the students in the area say that they're glad someone stepped in to help.
It's always the right thing to do, to step in, help out. And whether it was two men battling it out and one seemed less than the other, or a man and a woman and one seemed physically disadvantaged, everyone needs help in situations like that.
Now, detectives say everyone involved are in their late teens to early 20s, and all three people are talking with police officers. Now, police say they did recover a firearm on scene. Now, the man who was shot and the man who shot the man that was involved in the domestic disturbance, police have not identified publicly yet. But, Emily, we're told that police are offering any type of support to anyone that may be involved in a domestic violence situation. And they say if you spot anything that involves domestic violence, to please call them right away.
So they said this brother Jeremy Sorensen got into a fight with an 18-year-old woman, and they aren't releasing her identity or her name, but more than likely is a white girl. But they claim they were on the ground wrestling, fighting, when a random white boy whose identity they're also protecting, and they won't release his name, but he said he saw them as he was passing by. So then he decided to pull up and get out with a gun. And then the white boy started pointing the gun at this brother, not knowing who attacked who was the aggressor. But he pointed his gun at this brother and told him to stop or I'll shoot. Then he said this brother Jeremy Sorensen didn't pay him no mind and didn't respond to him at all. So because he didn't comply with some random white boy's order, they said that's what cost him his life. He shot this brother twice, including one in the chest, killing him. Now this white boy who killed somebody, they haven't even released his name yet. But they have never had a problem deputizing citizens. And although they're supposed to be investigating, the police have their cape on for this random white boy.
One big mystery tonight in this shooting is the shooter.
Yeah, ABC4's Sarah Martin digs into what we know about the bystander involved in last night's event.
At this point, all we can say confidently is that the person was a man. He had a gun, and as of right now, he hasn't been arrested or charged in the death of 26-year-old Jeremy Sorensen.
A passerby pulled up, saw the altercation, stepped out, yelled at Mr. Sorensen. He did not respond, produced a firearm, again gave warnings. Mr. Sorensen did not respond and discharged a firearm at Mr. Sorensen.
If there was reason to believe that the shooting or the killing was justified, then there'd be no reason to arrest him. There'd be no reason to charge him.
Bradley Henderson is a defense attorney with Cannon's Law Group. He explained that there is just too little information here to say what the police or the district attorney are thinking, but the presence of a witness, the woman being attacked by Sorensen, who was then taken to the hospital, is a clear source of information.
Self-defense doesn't just have to be defense of yourself. It can be of another person. As long as you're not part of starting the fight, if somebody is being an aggressor towards you, you have no duty to retreat and try in your attempt to de-escalate it.
In order for a person in Utah to carry a loaded firearm, even in their car, the person must have a concealed carry permit.
So if he had a concealed carry permit, it's fairly reasonable to say his criminal record is very clean.
Charges coming from the district attorney's office against a person that is not being detained can take weeks, even months to process.
What I would say is in a hypothetical similar to this, there'd be a very, very good self-defense claim.
We have reached out to the Utah County District Attorney to ask if they will be pressing charges. We have not received an answer.
Now, the Provo Police spokesman, Nisha King, a white woman, started making excuses and trying to come up with reasons why she thinks it's okay for somebody just to pull up and kill somebody. She didn't say call the police, call somebody that's qualified. It seemed like she was deputizing more people to go do the same thing. And she was giving them the green light. Now they're saying self-defense doesn't have to be defending yourself. You could be defending somebody else. Although this white boy just pulled up and he didn't know who the aggressor was at all. But when you go out of your way to jump in somebody else's business, it's still self-defense. Then they just assume whoever this white boy is, he doesn't have a criminal record without actually looking into it. And even though he is the one that just killed somebody, they went out of their way to bring up this brother Jeremy Sorensen's past.
Police are investigating a domestic violence shooting that has now turned deadly. The incident started with a fight between a man and a woman near 5th North and 2nd East, right in front of BYU student housing. A passerby stopped to break up the fight. An altercation between that person and the man ensued, and the passerby fired his gun twice. ABC4's Jason Wynn covering this story for us. And Jason, 26-year-old Jeremy Sorensen in critical condition, but ended up dying at the hospital. What can you tell us about his past?
Emily, Sorensen was charged with domestic violence in front of a child in January of 2013. The case, according to court documents, involved his mother. Now, he was also charged later on that year with criminal mischief and licensing violations.
All right, Sergeant. Would this be a case of Good Samaritan intervening?
That's a good question. That's up to the determination of the county attorney.
Provo Police say 26-year-old Jeremy Sorensen was seen beating up an 18-year-old woman in this driveway.
When a passerby pulled up, saw the altercation, stepped out, yelled at Mr. Sorensen. He did not respond, produced a firearm, again gave warnings. Mr. Sorensen did not respond and discharged a firearm at Mr. Sorensen.
Officers say they got a call at 7:58, and by 7:59, they were on scene at 500 North, 200 East.
Officers arrived, performed life-saving measures. EMTs arrived and actually transported 26-year-old Jeremy Sorensen to the hospital, where he later died.
The woman was taken to the hospital and treated with severe injuries, but she is expected to be okay. The bigger question is, should gun owners step in when they see domestic violence taking place?
It's hard to say, this is what you should do in a situation if you're producing a firearm, just because every situation is so different. If in an ideal scenario, if you have the opportunity to do that, that would be a good thing.
Again, the Utah County District Attorney's Office will decide if there's any charges filed in this case. Emily, I should tell you that Sergeant King did tell me that if any type of domestic violence raises to the point where it gets physical, it's time to get police involved.
Now, this brother Jeremy Sorensen was the one who was shot and killed, but they're bringing up petty crimes that happened years ago. They claim this girl, who was more than likely a white girl, had to go to the hospital. But the cause for the fight in the first place is not even important to them, especially when it comes to white girls. However, had a black man intervened and killed that white boy, Austin Sheffield, who beat up that black woman in Texas, I wonder if they would have the same excuses trying to justify it. I wonder if they would still be happy that somebody intervened. Or would they tell that black man you should have called the police and charged them with murder? If somebody does something to a white girl, there's never an excuse for it. But when that 50-year-old white man punched that 11-year-old black girl, people say she deserved it. And there's a reason to justify it. But in this case, they're happy this brother is dead because there is no excuse for it. Especially if it's a black man with a white woman. But until we have the same mindset of protecting our women and our children and ourselves and making sure we all come home at night, then we're going to get the same results. That is one thing we have to take from them and respond with more urgency than they do. Because until harming us comes with consequences, then people are going to continue to do it. And at the end of the day, we have no friends. We are all we got.
A 10-year-old boy mistaken by a police officer as a wanted suspect held at gunpoint in his own front yard. The Woods Cross Police Department saying the officer did nothing wrong, but the boy's mother is demanding action. ABC4's Brittany Johnson joining us live from Salt Lake with the story tonight. Brittany.
That's right, Emily. The child's mother, along with Black Lives Matter, the NAACP, and Mormon Women for an Ethical Government are all calling for an independent investigation tonight. And an attorney here at Christensen and Jensen is also giving the mother legal insight free of charge.
An officer had a pistol pointed at his head and was telling him, "You need to put your hands up in the air."
It happened Thursday afternoon. The officer, one of many searching for armed and dangerous suspects described as two Polynesian males. According to Woods Cross Police, the officer spotted DJ playing in the front yard. A police spokesperson says the officer mistook DJ for one of the suspects.
He pulled up a gun at my head.
While Rubis believes the officer was prejudiced against her son because he is black, she does not want him fired. Black Lives Matter Utah feels differently. They're calling for the officer to be fired immediately.
DJ is as dark as I am, if not darker. That does not fit the description. He is 4'10". That does not fit the description of a man. I'm sorry. BS. Our community is fed up with stories like this.
The police officer did come back and apologize to DJ on Thursday. Rubis and Black Lives Matter say an apology isn't enough.
We need to hold these officers accountable. They're not above the law.
Rubis says DJ has medical disabilities and learning delays. They live in Montana but return to Utah often for DJ's medical treatments. Before yesterday's incident, Rubis even considered moving back to West Bountiful.
That changed after yesterday. I do not feel that he is safe, that any of my kids are safe.
And Woods Cross Police saying they did nothing wrong, admitting one of their officers did point a gun at DJ, but it was never pointed at his head. Tonight, there is no further comment on Woods Cross Police in regards to this independent investigation.
Home asleep when they're awakened by Chicago police and forced out into the cold at gunpoint.
It was another bad raid with small children in the house, and as CBS 2 investigator Dave Savini reports, one of them was even handcuffed.
What were they saying?
Come out with your hands up.
It was early morning on a school day when she and her children woke up to a swarm of officers, police yelling over a bullhorn for them to get out of their home. And you came all the way out here?
All the way out. They say walk, keep your hands up, walk.
So you were surrounded by police right here?
Surrounded by police right now with rifles pointed at us.
That's when these kids watched their mom, Dominique Wilson, get handcuffed. Then officers started to hone in on 8-year-old Royal Wilson.
My hands was behind my back and they had them tight.
And you were handcuffed like that on the street?
Yes.
So why were police there? They got a tip alleging there were illegal guns in the home. They were wrong, and the search warrant itself said the suspect didn't even live there.
My legs are shaking.
You're just a third grader?
Yes.
For nearly a year, the CBS 2 investigators have been exposing an alarming pattern of police traumatizing children during other wrong raids, swearing at children, pointing guns at them, and handcuffing innocent parents and relatives in front of them. Al Hofeld Jr. is planning to file a lawsuit against the city on behalf of the Wilson family. It's his 5th case involving Chicago police raiding a home where children had guns pointed at them and are now suffering from trauma.
Hopefully you're showing the public the need for meaningful reform.
I didn't know what was going to happen.
The family said police didn't remove his cuffs for at least 30 minutes and kept everyone outside, including the kids, even though it was raining and just 37 degrees. And while they were outside, here's what police were doing inside.
They destroyed your ceiling.
They destroyed my ceiling.
So what did they find?
Nothing.
So they raided your home, pointed guns at your kids, and they blew out your ceiling to search for guns, and they found nothing.
Nothing. These are children that's being traumatized.
Dave Savini, CBS 2 Investigators.
Chicago police say it is not CPD protocol to handcuff children. CPD says initially they did not know the age of the child, and once the age of the child was determined, handcuffs were removed. Our ongoing CBS 2 investigation into wrong police raids has led to proposed legislation. House Bill 51 outlines steps officers would have to take to make sure children are safe from physical and mental harm.
What you're seeing is a ritual of torture.
First, a chair with restraints comes into view. Then a Cuyahoga County Jail Corrections officer starts shaking a can of pepper foam.
She had no idea that she was about to be tortured. She comes into the room pretty cooperatively.
We can't hear what's being said, but attorneys representing Chantel Glass say the video speaks for itself.
They think that it's okay and it's perfectly normal to quote-unquote teach somebody a lesson.
Chantel had been demanding to make a phone call, says her attorney, Subodh Chandra.
Also that people would know where she was. And she was getting pretty loud and insistent about it.
Strapped to the chair, she lifts her leg and is immediately punched, then pepper foamed in the face by corrections officers identified as Idris Fareed Clark and Robert Marsh.
And you see all the other corrections officers standing around. They didn't really try to take care of her. She wasn't permitted to shower for an extended period of time. And so she continued to suffer tremendous physical pain.
In April, both Clark and Marsh were indicted and arrested on multiple charges, including assault. A total of 7 COs and the former jail director have been indicted over the past 2 months from various incidents, all pleading not guilty. As for the newly released video, a spokesperson for Cuyahoga County says they can't respond right now because it's an ongoing case. But Attorney Chandra says the video says a lot.
The indifference to human suffering afterward is just, it simply boggles the mind.
Where do you need a supervisor for? Where do you need a supervisor
Because I just was unlawfully searched. I didn't commit to a search. I don't understand why I was searched.
I'm sorry, why? I didn't know nothing you just
I don't
said.
understand why I was just searched, why my information was pulled out of my pocket for no reason.
Because you can't do that.
But she doesn't have a right to do that. I'm detained under one reason. I'm not committed of no crime.
Crazy.
Okay, but she went in my pocket though. She's not supposed to go in my pocket. That's a search, man, kid. You know what I mean? Come on. You know that like I know that.
No, you don't really know half the shit you're talking about.
I know enough of the shit that I'm talking about. I know enough. I know I need your badge number and your name too. 529 is my badge number. Okay, perfect. Why are you trying to threaten me?
No, I'm not.
Are you threatening me? You're looking very like you trying to threaten me. The way that you approached me was very threatening.
Man, why your man tripping,
I'm
man?
straight. I'm good. I have nothing under my record, none of that. You can't touch me, baby.
So if you want to talk to me about what I'm doing,
yeah,
you can call the city hall.
No, I can ask for your. No, I just want to ask for your supervisor.
It's crazy, man.
Can I ask for your
I am
supervisor?
the supervisor.
Oh, you are the supervisor. Okay, definitely. What was your name and your badge number again? What you say?
Fuck you, my name.
I got that on cam. It's
Definitely
crazy.
on record.
I got that on cam.
Hundreds of police officers around the country are taking heat tonight for public posts that they made on Facebook. Here's the problem. A lot of people think the posts were violent, racist, and sexist. Police in Philadelphia are among those under investigation, and Don Dahler's there.
The people at this rally outside the Philadelphia police headquarters weren't surprised by what they read in the racist social media rants.
We live here in this city.
But Solomon Jones, one of the protest organizers, says the brazen public display took it to a different level.
It's a turning point because they felt the license to engage in hate in a public way. And what that says to me is that there is a culture that allows that to happen.
The Facebook posts in question contained discriminatory opinions. If our country was all Caucasian, the homicide rate would drop 70%. Perhaps we should be very suspicious of all Muslims in this country, said another. Or encourage violence. It's a good day for a chokehold. They were collected by the Plainview Project, a group of lawyers and activists who over 2 years painstakingly reviewed the Facebook pages of 3,500 current and former police officers in 8 departments: Dallas and Denison, Texas, Lake County, Florida, St. Louis, Twin Falls, Idaho, Phoenix, York, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia, where over 300 officers were flagged for allegedly expressing racist, violent, or misogynistic views.
I want the 328 officers who are on active duty to be taken off the street right now, because it says to me that your mindset is one that you don't feel that my life is valuable.
All 8 police departments have issued statements saying they found those posts objectionable. 4 of them have put some of their officers on temporary desk duty pending investigations. Now, different departments have different policies about this kind of behavior, but David, only St. Louis has referred the matter to a prosecutor.
You need to start doing drugs, man.
No, I don't need to do any fucking drugs.
You need to stop doing drugs, bro.
Drugs for what?
See what you gotta deal with these people out here, man? You see these people?
Well, you guys ain't supposed to be here in the first place.
Right.
You don't look like you're 55 years old.
Call the police. I live here.
You don't. You're not 55 years old.
It don't matter. I don't have to be 55 to live here.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Where the hell you been living, man?
I don't have to be 55.
This is a 55 a year older
I'm on the lease
community.
here. I don't have to be 55 a year older. One person has to be 55. I don't have to be 55.
He know it all.
He know it all. I'm on the lease here, screening everything.
You're screened here? Yeah, I don't freaking
know. You don't freaking know.
But you live on that side, but you're sitting over here.
It doesn't matter where I'm sitting.
It doesn't matter.
Am I breaking the law? What law am I breaking?
Call the police then,
Call
bro.
the police, man.
I don't call the police. You guys got to be doing this every day.
You guys,
we mean you. Who's you? I don't know why you guys have to be doing this every day.
Who's doing what every day?
Just give you a brand new parking lot over there for you to park?
You own this parking lot? This is a guest parking lot.
Didn't he just give you a brand new parking lot on that side?
What does it matter? Does it say guest parking or what does it say? Guest, right?
It doesn't have to say nothing here.
Do you own this parking spot?
When I see people fucking doing nothing in their cars, that's suspicious activity. Do you not get that?
You're not the police.
You not get that?
So if you run up on me like that and I shoot you, what's the problem now?
I'm gonna shoot you back, and I'm probably a better fucking shot. That's the only thing, because I don't shoot guns like this.
He on the race thing. He on the race thing. He on the race thing. We hoodlums. We hoodlums. We hoodlums. Yeah. We hoodlums.
Well, when you're sitting here and you got no job,
we don't have no job.
You don't have no job. You're sitting in a fucking parking lot all morning. You do
all morning. Yeah, we'll be here all morning, huh?
I've seen the car here for 2 hours already, right?
Damn, 2 hours? 2 hours?
2 hours? When I left this morning, this car was here.
Damn, for real? This is why you don't do drugs, people. See what drugs do to you?
No,
and alcohol?
No fucking drugs.
And heroin.
Fucking drugs.
You know the white people, they like heroin.
They
like heroin and meth and all. That's their type of drugs.
That's
he look like a meth head.
Sell it.
Look at him. He look like a meth head. Look at him.
You get the fuck out.
Fucking meth head.
You fucking dirtbag fuckers.
Lucky gonna fuck you up for calling a nigga. I'm sorry, I said. Fuck out of here, pussy. Don't play with me, I'll knock you the fuck out right now. You called him a nigga. You called him a nigga. I said I'm sorry, you're right. Ain't no sorry, you called him a nigga. I'm not playing that shit. I just came on too. It's a situation. It's not fair. Fuck out of here. It's not fair, don't sweat me. What the fuck is you talking about? Call me nigga again, I'ma knock you the fuck out. I said, why did you say I'm sorry? Call me nigga again, I'ma knock you out. Sorry to this guy. Call me nigga, I'ma knock you the fuck out. Pussy. You pussy. I just came home. You pussy. I knock you the fuck out. I don't want to get hit. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here. I knock you out. Please. I knock you out. Call me nigga again. Please. Call me nigga again. I won't. Call me nigga again. Dude, I don't want to get hit. Call me nigga again. I won't. I won't. Say you sorry. I'm sorry. Say you sorry. I'm sorry. Say fucking sorry. I'm heartfully sorry. Pussy. We're using that word. Fuck out of here. I'm sorry for it. Tell him you sorry. Go tell him you sorry right now. I will. Go tell him you sorry. Bro. Fuck out of here, pussy. Say you sorry. I don't even say that word. I'm sorry. Fuck out of here. He's right. He's right. That ain't do you no good. Touch me. That ain't do you no good. Touch me. That ain't do you that. Touch me. Call me a nigga again. Call me a nigga. I'm gonna fucking cut. Call me a nigga. Touch me. Touch me. Opportunity. Tough guy. I want to raise your fucking face off. Tough guy. Touch me. Touch me, nigga. What? I told you. Okay, all right.
You guys doing?
Hello, 911.
Yo.
Hold on, just wait, baby. Hold on.
Yo.
The police are right there. Watch out. They're right behind you. Calm down, baby girl. Hey, just move out of the car. Just move from out of the car so you don't get hurt.
Yo.
Watch out, watch out. You watch out, y'all. Move. Watch out, man.
Yo. Yo.
Yo, what the fuck? The fuck?
Oh my.
Why would you jump
You
into
right,
a
man.
car like that? Come on, man. You're gonna get away with it. Why would you?
All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, after hundreds of years, there's no way we should still be surprised when we face injustices. We need to be using it as motivation to get out of this situation. We can't allow people to continue hurting us without consequences. And we have had so many massacres against us, that should be enough for us to want to make it stop happening. Most of the massacres against us started from rumors about us doing something. And now people are actually getting murdered and still not doing anything to defend ourselves. The Wilmington Massacre of 1898 started after a white woman, Rebecca Latimer Felton, who was prominent in the women's suffrage movement, or the white feminist movement of the time. And she gave a speech talking about the problems white women on farms have. And she stressed the biggest threat to white women was the Negro rapist. And she said it was due to white men's failure to protect them. Then she said white men should resort to vigilante justice and use lynch mob rule as a way to restore protection. So then the owner of the black newspaper, the Daily Record, Alexander Manley, responded to this white woman's speech in the article saying black men weren't raping white women, they were willing participants. And he said poor white men are careless in protecting them. And then paraphrasing Ida B. Wells, he made the case that white women secretly lust after black men just as much as white men secretly lust after black women. And in this article, he exposed the sexual exploitation and sexual crimes against black women by white men. And he challenged the myth of the pure white woman. Within 48 hours of this article being published, a lynch mob of 500 gathered outside his office, led by Alfred Waddell, who was a failed politician being supported by his wife. Seeing it as an opportunity to get back in politics, he and other white speakers began to incite the crowd, and they began to show images of black men raping white women, implying black men's uncontrollable lust for white women makes them black beasts who threaten to deflower white women. And they had these rallies every day for months, spreading the same rhetoric. One senator, Ben Tillman, chastised the white men of North Carolina for not killing that damn nigger editor yet. He said had that article been published in South Carolina, he would have been dead a long time ago, and encouraged them to use shotgun policy when it comes to Negroes. Alfred Waddell said the only important issue for white men should be white supremacy. And he advocated for punishing race traitors who helped Negroes because things like black people being able to vote was the greatest crime in modern civilization, according to him. Then the white people began leading parades through the black communities, including white women who were waving flags as they marched. And the black residents knew it could pop off any time, and they started trying to buy guns and gunpowder. But all the local gun dealers were white and refused to sell to them. Then they reported the names of any black person who tried to buy ammunition. Meanwhile, during the same time period, over 400 guns were sold to whites, and they were basically giving away ammunition. Then a couple days later, they had another white man's rally, and this time they armed everybody. They marched through the black neighborhoods, shooting up churches, shooting up schools, shooting up houses. And at the end of the march, 1,000 people greeted them with a picnic that had free food. And these kind of marches kept happening over and over, and they deputized white citizens to control the streets at night. Eventually, using violence, the white supremacists won the election, and they began creating a white Declaration of Independence. Then they started making demands that the black citizens submit to white supremacy and accept whatever happens to them. It doesn't matter if you get lynched or anything. And they gave the editor, Alexander Manley, 24 hours to leave town, and they only had 12 hours to reply in compliance. Now, Alexander Manley had already left, and the black leaders tried to reason with him. They condemned Alexander Manley in his article. White leaders said the time for talk is over. So then the mob of 500, heavily armed, brought in a Gatling gun. First they broke into the building where the black newspaper was printed and looted it, and then they burned it down. And the mob grew to close to 2,000 people. They went into the black community and destroyed the businesses, their property, their homes, their churches, their schools, and they tried to kill every damn nigga in sight. They terrorized the city for a full day, and many of the black residents were forced to hide in the black cemetery. By the end, they reported 25 people were killed, but it could really be anywhere from 60 to 300 people. And witnesses say it's closer to 300. They said they dumped so many bodies in the river. During the whole event, no white person was ever killed, no one was ever arrested. And after the massacre, they sent out telegraphs to other places saying this is how you restore white supremacy and restore protection of white women. And it's no different today. They still use violence to enforce white supremacy. In Oklahoma, a deaf elderly brother, Pearl Pearson, who was brutally beaten by Oklahoma City police. Now let's see how a traffic stop could lead to an elderly deaf man being brutally beaten.
My dad is one of my most favorite people on this earth because he is gentle and kind, and it's genuine.
My name is Pearl Pearson Jr.
Do you have a name sign?
Pearl. And I love jokes. I love making people laugh. My brain was damaged from all of the blows. I had been hit and I almost blacked out. My eyes were damaged. It was difficult for me to breathe. You know, I was trying to tell them to stop. I was choked up. I couldn't breathe. My head, I was dizzy because of the trauma that was happening. I curled over in the fetal position just trying to make it stop. Before that, I had gone to a deaf coffee event at Starbucks. And they closed at 10, and I left about 9:30. I said bye to everybody, and I left. And we were driving. And then there were some police lights behind me. I didn't know where we were going, so I pulled over, and the police pulled up behind me. I have a placard in my car that explains that I'm deaf and that I have communication needs, so I was getting ready to get that. I had my hands on the wheel, and the policeman came up with his gun drawn around the side of the car. And I rolled down the window, and the police started talking to me. And I pointed my ear to say, I'm deaf, just a second. And I was going to reach for that paper, that placard that I had that explains I'm deaf. And when I reached down, his fist came through the window. And then his other hand grabbed my wrist.
Get out the car. Get out the car. Who's resisting? Who's resisting?
When they pulled his arm like that, it dislocated his shoulder. So at that moment, before he even got out of the vehicle, his right arm is completely out of socket.
So they finally got the door open and got the seatbelt off and pulled me out onto the ground, and then were beating me. And the police say that it was 7 minutes, but it really felt more like 10 or 15.
They at one point had him in a chokehold. We learned that he had a concussion. My dad believed that he would die and that he was going to die.
Give us your hands. Give us your hands.
I was yelling, I'm deaf, and I was angry and I was upset, trying to make them understand. And I tried to talk and I tried to tell them, but they kept beating me, they kept hitting. And so I just had to go back into a fetal position. I was screaming.
You can't follow commands if you can't hear them. You can't put your arms behind your back when you've got one arm dislocated and hanging out and the muscles that are attached to it torn. It's not physically possible to do that.
Hey, you know why he was resisting you? Because he was trying to grab the car. Oh, that's what it was. I knew it. This place is jacked up. Hey, make sure in your report you put that there was nothing identifying him deaf whatsoever. Right. On the outside or inside. Right. That was in the side pocket, and he never even, he never said about it. Right. Okay. Okay. All right.
Now, this elderly brother, Pearl Pearson, was being accused of a hit and run. Somebody claimed he tapped the bumper of a car in a parking lot after he was leaving Starbucks from an event they had for deaf people. So when the police, Officer Eric Foster and Officer Kelson Haynes, pulled him over, he started reaching for a sign to let them know he's deaf. And he tried to make hand gestures to let him know he's deaf and let him know what he's doing. So as he started to reach for his sign, the cops claimed they thought this 64-year-old elderly man was reaching for a gun. And no matter who you are, man, woman, old, young, if you're black, they already scared of you and see you as a threat in a lot of cases. Even when they say show me your ID, they still claim they thought you were reaching for a gun. So as this elderly man was reaching down, they grabbed his arm and pulled it out the socket. Then grabbed his wrist and pulled this elderly man out of his car and threw him face down on the ground. They claimed this elderly man was struggling, but they beat this man up for what they say was 7 minutes, but he said it felt like 15 minutes. And at some point, they gave him a concussion. And then they put this elderly deaf man in a chokehold. And despite this man trying to yell, make it known that he's deaf, they just kept beating him. And he said he ended up getting into a fetal position, just trying to protect himself. And he said he thought he was going to die. Then after that was over, with torn muscles in his arm and a dislocated shoulder, they had this man in handcuffs for hours, despite beating him so bad that his eyes were swollen shut, and so bad to the point he thought he could lose his eyesight. They still didn't get him no medical help for a long time. The DA, David Prater, called it textbook policing. He then turned around and charged his brother Pearl Pearson.
It is critical new information about the arrest of Pearl Pearson. Pearson is 64 years old and deaf, and he was seriously injured, as you can tell, by highway patrol troopers during a routine traffic stop.
Our coverage of that violent arrest sparked a criminal investigation into the officer's actions. News Channel 4's Allie Meyer has been talking with a number of people involved in the incident.
And tonight, she's the only Oklahoma reporter who has obtained the dash cam video from that traffic stop and the breaking new details on the criminal investigation surrounding this case.
For months, we've been telling you about the trooper loophole, a special exemption in the Oklahoma Open Records Act that means OHP doesn't have to release dash cam video. And so in the arrest of Pearl Pearson and so many others throughout our state, OHP refused to release the tape. But now that the Pearl Pearson arrest is part of a criminal case, we got the tape. Take a look. It's 10:30 at night and Trooper Eric Foster is on patrol. He's in the driver's seat. He's got a civilian ride along next to him, and we're going to hide that man's identity. They are catching up to the suspect in a hit and run. The victims, with their flashers on, following behind the suspect SUV. Pearl Pearson is in the driver's seat of that white Suburban. The whole thing started at 19th Street and Moore, where Pearson allegedly backed into a vehicle with 3 people inside. The driver called 911 and tailed Pearson until OHP caught up at I-40 and Eastern.
When you look at the dash cam tape, do you see a textbook arrest or do you see officer abuse?
I see a great deal of restraint.
Hand out the window! Hand out the window! Hand out the window! Both hands out the window!
They had enough sense about them and showed enough restraint to where they did what they thought they needed to do and nothing more. So I don't see textbook, yeah. Support staff.
DA David Prater has analyzed the dash cam video to look for evidence of police brutality. What he found instead, he calls a textbook case of police restraint. You see, troopers feared Pearson had a weapon.
They're like, put your hands out of the vehicle, put your hands out of the vehicle, show us your hands, show us your hands. And they're not just yelling it, they're all going like this. And then right about there is where he reaches down. Right when they're right next to the vehicle, he reaches down very quickly.
The camera rolls for the entire ordeal, most of the action off screen. But even though you can't see the arrest, you can hear it. For 5.5 minutes, you hear officers struggle with Pearl Pearson. They have no idea he is profoundly deaf, and they have no idea why he's resisting.
Incredibly helpful, incredibly helpful. I wish that every law enforcement agency had dash cam, because it tells the rest of the story. No matter what the story is, it tells the truth, and that's why it's very important. And I relied on it greatly in this case in determining what to do.
OHP detectives interviewed 5 troopers, that civilian ride-along, and the 3 people in the car Pearson backed into. They all say the same thing. Pearson fought the officers when they tried to make the arrest. Documents show when Pearson reached down for his hearing-impaired placard, officers believed he was reaching for a gun.
You have to comply with law enforcement, and they have to see your hands. Your hands can kill someone. That's what you grab weapons with. That's what you punch people with. That's what you stab people with. That's what you shoot people with. Your hands.
When the cuffs are finally on and Pearson is finally in police custody, his face bears the marks of that scuffle. His eyes swollen shut. Hospital records indicate his shoulder had been dislocated. Also on the dash cam tape, those moments after the arrest, where troopers finally learn Pearl Pearson is hearing impaired.
It said hearing impaired on the thing. It said hearing impaired. Like deaf. Well, his license says, it doesn't matter when we're trying to get his hands, he's still fighting. Dude was strong, man.
I believe he came close to his death that night.
Pearl Pearson's defense attorney, Billy Coyle, hasn't seen the video yet, but he stands with his client and believes Pearson was roughed up unnecessarily by the OHP.
A minor accident that the officers didn't witness. They didn't need to draw guns on Mr. Pearson that night. They didn't need to yank him out of the car and beat him like some animal. They savagely beat this man for no reason.
Coyle is shocked his deaf client is now facing a criminal charge for resisting arrest.
Very disappointed that the district attorney thinks that my client resisted arrest. He didn't resist arrest. He was trying to get his hands in front of them to let them know that he was deaf. I can't speak.
Those that advocate for the disabled, you know, I understand that, but you also need to understand the other side of it. Mr. Pearson's very fortunate to be alive today, and that's because of his actions.
DA David Prater has cleared the highway patrolman of all wrongdoing. He sent word to the OHP this afternoon.
Now, this DA David Prater said, it doesn't matter if you're deaf, you still have to comply. It doesn't matter to him, you can't hear what you're supposed to comply to. Then after they beat this deaf elderly man up, they found out after the fact he was deaf. And one of them even said, I knew that's what he was reaching for. Then these cops started laughing about what they did on camera. And I guess not knowing they were being recorded, tried to get their lie together. And they said he never said or did anything to let him know he was deaf in the first place. He said he could have had his card in his pocket, but he didn't say anything. And the media went out the way to cut out the part with them laughing. But the DA David Prater still says it was this elderly brother, Pearl Pearson's fault.
Hands out the window, hands out the window. Hands out the window, both hands out the window. Stick both hands out the window. It said hearing impaired on the thing. It said hearing impaired. Oh, like deaf.
His eyes were swollen and it was like blood. He would have been looking at the possibility of losing his eyesight. You know, he already, doesn't have his access to hearing things, and to lose his eyesight too would be just, I don't even know how to say it. So, my dad, like I said, is the nicest, most fun, gentle guy. And I didn't understand how this could be done to him. Dad did not learn ASL, American Sign Language, until he eventually ended up at the Oklahoma School for the Deaf after it was desegregated.
Due to segregation of education systems, there were full sign languages developed in Black deaf communities all around the nation.
I have to believe that law enforcement officers in general are trying to do the right thing. My husband's in law enforcement, my brother's in law enforcement. It's really frustrating to realize that not all truth is brought forward. That dash cam video that everybody has seen in the media is from that first car. Well, there's a second car that has dash cam video that should have captured what the police actually did. We have been told that the trooper that was in that second car turned the dash cam video off.
I'm kind of hesitant now to roll down my window all the way with the police. I might crack it and put the sign that says that I'm deaf there, but I don't want to roll down my window all the way anymore.
There's a fear for sure that this might happen again, and it shouldn't. It should never happen again. There needs to be training, there needs to be education. I mean, so there's just no excuse for it in this day and age.
Police need to understand what being deaf means. When we move our hands, it's not a threat. It's signing, it's how we communicate. I wish that they understood that and that wouldn't cause them to panic.
Now, even though these cops got caught on camera laughing about them jacking his face up, and they claim one of the cops turned off the dash camera that would have caught exactly what happened on camera, they ended up charging their 64-year-old brother, Pearl Pearson, with resisting arrest. Eventually, after 3 years, they did end up dropping the charges because they said the special interpreters he need cost way too much money. So they just dropped all the charges. Even though what he did was bad enough to get him beat up like that, it wasn't bad enough to prosecute him because they didn't have enough money. But this elderly brother still had to go through 3 years of court for getting beat up by the cops because he was trying to tell him he's deaf. But the ones who committed the violence were never actually punished and were out there patrolling the streets the whole time. And are probably still out there patrolling the same streets. At the end of the day, we don't have a choice but to get on code. Because if we don't, it means our death. We have to be ready to protect ourselves, to protect our elderly, protect our children, protect our women. At the end of the day, we are all we got. If we don't protect ourselves, then nobody will.
They say the Cape Fear River was full of bloody black bodies that day, that black people couldn't find their way, that black men died from gunshots in their backs, that black women ran to the swamps across the tracks, that very smart and bold black men were put on the train and given a free ride out of town where they were told to remain. They say that the dead bodies were left in the streets. The foul smell was so strong that buzzards circled for weeks, that black babies cried and moaned for their fathers and a bite to eat, that black folks lost all their savings and were left helpless and beat. It had to be done, said the white people who started it. They loved their town until the blacks tried to change it. They took over the city to restore their heritage, they said. They were heroes to many who wanted uppity folks dead. Some folks still don't see anything wrong with what they did, or that any harm was done to the ones who ran and hid. Serious damage was done to the soul of the town. That's why folks want to turn it around. Now is the time to make up for the crime, to help our children learn from our mistake, to ensure that there will be no more 1898.
A painful chapter in New York City's history. 5 young men wrongfully imprisoned for raping a jogger in Central Park. Retold on Netflix.
I didn't see a lady or hit anyone.
The miniseries triggering new backlash against one of the prosecutors behind the 1989 convictions, Linda Fairstein. Calls for boycotts of her crime novels, a petition getting more than 50,000 signatures. Fairstein's Twitter account deleted as anger boiled over with the trending hashtag Cancel Linda Fairstein. Lester asked the men known as the Central Park Five specifically about the former sex crimes prosecutor and her team.
Linda Fairstein and others who were involved in the prosecution, they haven't retreated a step.
At all. No apology. All the time we did for something we didn't do, and it hurts.
They still think that we're guilty. So how do we hear when we're constantly in a state of defending ourselves?
When a serial rapist admitted to the crime in 2002 and his DNA was a match, the 5 men had their convictions vacated. They accused detectives of coercing confessions from them. To this day, Fairstein defends the prosecution's conduct and the decision to pursue the case, now calling the Netflix miniseries grossly and maliciously inaccurate, misrepresenting the facts in an inflammatory and inaccurate manner. While one of the men wrongfully convicted had this to say to TMZ.
Even though it's 30 years later, she has to pay for her crime.
They made us lie.
The anger over what they lived through, never far from the surface, now tapped into once again.
A Mother's Day celebration gone wrong. An African-American man attacked in front of his wife in a confrontation that deputies say was fueled by race. News 6's Troy Campbell is live outside the Volusia County Sheriff's Office tonight. And Troy, 2 of the men are being charged with a hate crime.
And that's because investigators here say the evidence shows that the men only fought the victim because of the color of his skin. We spoke to the owner of that sports bar, and he says his employee called 911 because she was frightened by what she was witnessing.
And how many people are involved?
I don't know. I've stepped away, but there's a lot of people.
In a 911 call placed from inside Tailgater's Bar in Edgewood on Mother's Day, a woman is heard telling the dispatcher that an African-American man was being attacked.
Law enforcement needs to get here. There's a terrible fight, and there's one African-American that's being beat to a pulp, and no one is here to defend him by a bunch of rednecks, and I just need someone to come.
Investigators saying surveillance video from inside the bar shows the victim and his wife having a drink when one of the suspects, 66-year-old Warren Randy Stratton, walks up to the couple. Witnesses telling detectives Stratton asked the victim if he was from Africa and then refused to leave them alone, eventually pushing the victim. Detectives say the video shows witnesses attempting to break up the fight when Stratton's nephew, 52-year-old Troy No, approaches, punching both the victim and a witness. Moments later, No's 20-year-old son John is seen striking the victim in his back.
Do you know if anybody's intoxicated?
Yes. It seems like it.
All 3 were arrested for felony battery based on racial prejudice. The state attorney's office later lowering John No's charge to misdemeanor battery.
Could you tell if anyone was injured? Do they need an ambulance?
They may.
Court records show that all 3 suspects have pleaded not guilty. The owner of Tailgater's Bar also tells me those same 3 men are no longer allowed to come into his business. He adds that his establishment is no place for racism. He also says the victim has since been back to the sports bar, and the victim is more than welcome.
Also new tonight, a Houston area family is planning legal action against Subway restaurants. They say their teenage daughter was refused employment simply because she's black. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Bill Biessa.
Hello, I'm Dominique Saxa. Tonight, the manager accused of not hiring the girl is out of a job. Channel 2 Sophia Beausoleil live in Spring with the story tonight. Sophia?
Caitlin Simmons says she was excited to apply to this Subway behind me because she has friends who work here. She was always taught that if she didn't receive a job or was rejected from a job, it was based off of merit. So she was shocked that her role when it comes to race was allegedly part of her job application.
They were trying out and
Caitlin Simmons is usually busy with drill team, but now that she's finished with junior year at Klein High School, it's time to make some extra money.
It's summertime now. I need to start getting back out there.
She applied to the Subway on Champion Forest Drive on Sunday, but later received this text from a friend who works there. Allegedly, the manager asked the employee what the prospective worker looks like, and when they mentioned that she is black, the next response stated, quote, "Oh, no thanks. I don't want those people in our store, LOL." Unquote.
It really upset me that it's we have people living in this day and age that still think like that.
I've taught my daughters to work hard, and that's what they do. And for someone to reject my daughter for a reason like that, it it frustrated me.
This mother and daughter did not want to stay silent and posted the response on social media.
The people who made this go viral are people who live in this community, and they look like the people this manager thought she was representing.
It's been shared more than 17,000 times and caught the attention of Subway. In a statement, the company says in part, quote, "The manager of this location was immediately terminated for her actions. The franchise owner has reached out to the young woman who applied for the position to apologize and encourage her to consider reapplying." The Simmons don't believe it's enough. I think there should be diversity training.
It hurts me because I think of what if someone else was in my spot and they needed this more than me, and this lady just ruined an opportunity for them and hurt them deeply.
And the Simmons claim that the owner did not reach out to them. Rather, it was an area manager, and they did not find that the apology was sincere. Caitlin says she does not plan on reapplying. She says this has left a bad taste in her mouth. And finally, the Simmons say that they are very active in this community, and they do not believe that the alleged text represents this community at all, which is why they say that they could not sit back and let this happen.
Betty Tate Thompson says it started when neighbors saw this Westmoreland news story about the KKK spreading recruitment flyers. And next to the front page story, a complete copy of the hate-filled flyer.
As if they were giving them free advertisement. And it even had the number on the flyer, the way you could contact the head of the KKK, which I thought was totally ridiculous.
She's not the only one fuming. Chief Danny Plott said he was shocked. He says he sent the flyer to the paper only to inform them that it was being distributed to dozens of property owners. He didn't think it would be published. He said he wrote the editor a strongly worded email, and she called him back with this explanation.
She explained that she wanted to put it in there to show people that those of us in Colonial Beach, Virginia, and the nation who think there's not racism, there is. And I think she did not mean for it to blow up to the portion and have the outcry that it's become.
Game night in Washington, D.C. Capitals versus Blues, with fans pouring in.
Go Caps!
And while Caps placards and jerseys are as ever all the rage, check these fans with those buttons and that t-shirt. A hockey stick crossing out a single ugly word, racism. A team of Bantam players from Maryland invited to this game by the Capitals because of what happened at one of their games last month. In Pennsylvania, opposing players shouted racial taunts and made monkey sounds aimed at one of the players from Maryland, Divine Apollon, 13 years old, targeted for the color of his skin.
I read the story, and it's pretty sad to read.
It prompted Capitals player Devontae Smith-Pelly to bring Divine's team to D.C. so he could offer up some hard-fought wisdom.
Maybe I could talk to him one-on-one and share some of my experiences with him.
Indeed, Smith-Pelly, born in Toronto and last year a Stanley Cup winner, has his own tale of racial taunting in the NHL in Chicago last February.
They were escorted out of the arena. Getting involved with Smith-Pelly and players.
A couple guys were, telling me to go play basketball, and I don't know if you saw the footage, but I was pretty upset and confronted them. And
it left Smith-Pelly determined to always battle back on this. The message he'd soon give to Divine:
don't let those small-minded people, kind of try and bring you down.
And so to last night.
Smith-Pelly fires, kick save Allen.
While he skated up a storm, Divine was the star of the stands, featured on NBC's broadcast of the game, and then afterward, in hockey heaven. He and his teammates were brought to the Caps dressing room in awe.
Can I just say it's an honor to meet you?
Yeah, thank you. Nice meeting you too.
Thank you.
Autographs for all, but for Divine, some private words of encouragement from Smith-Pelly. Grateful for the goodwill, Divine told us, truth is, he wonders whether this world will ever get past the ugliness of racism.
That I'm not sure, but hopefully.
Cross your fingers. And so he does.
A semi-pro hockey game in Quebec turned
ugly when fans began yelling racial slurs and racist slurs at one of the players. It all happened on the ice in Saint-Jérôme near Montreal on Saturday night. Video of it. Some spectators targeting a black player and his family watching the game in the stands. Now, this video has prompted outrage within the hockey community, and as Allison Northcott now reports, the league is apologizing.
I had to put my jersey over my face because I had teardrops, you know?
Jonathan Diaby says he's faced racism before, but nothing like this.
They started yelling racist stuff at my parents and my sister and all that, and myself. Good old Negro and all that, the baboons, like a bunch of stuff that was said.
The insults, he says, came from a handful of spectators and were so bad he and his family left the arena before the game was over.
Well, my dad was told to go back home, that he had no business in his country and all places, stuff like that. You know, people were like touching his hair, they were making fun of him. My sister was scared, my girlfriend was scared.
He says referees and security guards did nothing to protect them. Diaby's league, the Ligue Nord-Américaine de Hockey, is notorious for rough play and rowdy crowds. But Diaby's coach says even by that standard, this goes too far.
In 2019, it's something that, you know, we shouldn't see anymore, and it's, I think it's disgusting.
The head of the league apologized to Diaby in this video, telling fans that racist, sexist, or homophobic comments are unacceptable. An owner of the opposing team says security guards did act, but didn't kick anyone out because no one threw any punches. Now, Robert Chevrier says the team is trying to identify the fans in question to ban them from future games. Former NHL player Georges Larac says there should be a rule across the league requiring teams to kick fans out who engage in this kind of behavior.
This is worst thing that I've ever seen. When I started to play hockey, and I've lived some racism when I played hockey, it was never to that level.
This is not hockey, you know, like that's far beyond like what should be happening on a regular Saturday night. You know, nobody should feel threatened to go watch his son play a hockey game.
Diaby says it's also up to players to tell their fans that hate is not okay in the stands or anywhere else.
It started with this Facebook post. A woman saw this sticker on the front window of women's clothing store Rare Trends in East Austin, reading exclusively for white people, maximum of 5 colored customers. There's also a city logo, and above it, sponsored by the City of Austin Contemporary Partition and Restoration Program.
We had nothing to do with that.
Caroline Gray is the director of sales and marketing for the store. She came in Wednesday expecting an average day, not knowing what was on the store's front window.
Come in from the side and in through the front door, and so the window is a little bit off to my, off to the left, so I don't see the front of the sign when I come in the door. I had no idea what was going on.
That was until the phone started ringing.
And she said, I just walked by your store and there's a sign in the window that says you only allow white people to shop. And I was like, what?
Gray walked outside and saw it for herself.
So I took it down. Since understood from the police, I should not have done that because there could have unfortunately been evidence that they could have used, but I took it down immediately.
Austin police came to the store to investigate. It turns out Rare Trends is not the only business hit by vandals with the sticker. It was also put on Windmill Bicycles and El Chiquito Restaurant on Manor Road, along with 2 other businesses in East Austin. Mayor Steve Adler condemns the act.
Those things are never funny, and those things are never innocent.
So along with police, the city's code enforcement officers will be looking for other stickers and the person or people posting them. Now, this is more than just a racist sticker. It's vandalism, which is a misdemeanor.
We tracked down Adam Raposa minutes before his flight out of town and asked him about the exclusively for white people stickers he admits to putting up on businesses around East Austin and what many say is a racist message behind them.
But I've seen nothing but the emotional attachment that human beings place on events in history. It's regrettable and unfortunate, and as soon as we can step beyond that precipice of mawkish emotionality and just look at the real facts like human beings is the moment that we have a chance for real progress.
In a YouTube video, Raposa talks about gentrification.
And the real problem is that people without money are getting pushed out, and pretty quick this area of town is turning into whites only. Oh, he said an offensive term. Let's not worry about the actual condition of the way things are. Let's worry about an offensive term.
Austin NAACP President Nelson Linder says using gentrification as an excuse to harm businesses and the community as a whole is shameful.
It's repugnant, it's also alarming, and also indicative of a mentality that doesn't understand race relations. So if you're trying to help race relations, you just done the worst thing you could possibly do.
Words echoed by Austin Mayor Steve Adler Wednesday when the stickers, which included a city seal, were first discovered.
Those things are never funny, and those things are never innocent.
Austin police detectives say they're aware of Raposa's YouTube admission and are investigating.
Not worried about legal action, though? I just don't worry. What happens, happens, and all I can do is move forward like a particle through space.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Are y'all serious? Oh, shit. Hey, get the fuck up. Hey, oh, shit. Oh, shit. What y'all doing? Don't touch my fucking boy. At the graduation! At the graduation! At the graduation! At the graduation! Oh, shit! Oh, Lord, forgive me! Lord, forgive me! Lord, forgive me! Oh, my God! No, I'm videoing. What's going on? What happened? I don't know. What happened? When I looked around, she was falling and he was on her. Why did she hit me? I didn't. She don't need to be hitting men with guns. Sure don't. Oh my goodness. I'm just trying to make sure everything.
I'm going to show you my credentials. Because the law requires me to. And after that, you've been advised by law enforcement to shut up.
That's not a law.
Yes, it is. No, but you need to leave.
I'm not leaving her in next custody. Why? Nobody do anything to her.
Ladies,
Can't hit
listen.
me. I'll be right her. I'll watch you throw her on the floor.
Oh, my goodness. Please get back.
I'm right here.
What's going on? This is a kid's graduation. Don't save no seat for nobody. You better stay put. And she gonna have to go find her seat.
What'd you say, ma'am?
Because I'm not gonna move.
You're not gonna move?
Oh. And can't nobody move me.
All right, and we back on the forecast. And I want to say RP to the brother Jeremy Sorensen and to all our people who were unjustly murdered. And luckily, the elder brother Pearl Pearson is alive and well to tell his story. But at the end of the day, until we're ready to protect each other, then we're going to get the same results. The dominant society doesn't hesitate to use violence if they even think you're a threat. Meanwhile, they have been spilling our blood for hundreds of years. And we still don't think about protecting ourselves. But they will go out of the way to protect themselves by any means necessary. But we have to respond with more urgency than they do to get out of the position that we are in. In order to ensure white supremacy survives, they will deputize each other, give each other the power to do what they have to do. In order for us to protect ourselves, we have to deputize ourselves. If we see somebody trying to harm one of our women or harm our children, we have to be ready to protect each other at all times. The dominant society used violence to implement white supremacy, and they use violence to maintain it. We have to do whatever we have to do to protect ourselves. Because when we rebuild our communities and we rebuild a nation, believe me, they will come. And we have to be ready to protect ourselves and protect whatever it is we build. We have to learn from past mistakes and stop making the same mistakes over and over and over. Now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.